The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of courtroom 305, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floors. Judge Hansol Kim adjusted his black robes and looked down at the case file on his desk. It was going to be another busy day in the Superior Court of Justice, but this particular case caught his attention. And not in a good way. Case number 2057 CR 421, Washington versus Park Technologies. The court clerk announced. Judge Kim looked up, expecting to see two teams of expensive lawyers entering his courtroom. Instead, he saw something that made him frown. On one side stood 5 people in perfectly pressed suits, their leather briefcases probably worth more than some people's monthly salary. They represented Park Technologies, one of the biggest tech companies in the country. Their lead lawyer, Da-hyun Lee, was famous for never losing a case. But on the other side stood just one young man. Marcus Washington was 25 years old, wearing a simple black suit that looked like it came from a department store. He carried an old laptop bag and a stack of papers. Judge Kim noticed how some people in the courtroom were already whispering and pointing at the young black man who dared to face a corporate giant alone. Mr. Washington, Judge Kim said, looking over his glasses, I see you have chosen to represent yourself in this case. His tone made it clear he thought this was a terrible idea. Marcus stood up straight and spoke clearly. Yes, Your Honor. And you understand that Park Technologies is claiming you stole their artificial intelligence technology. Judge Kim shuffled through some papers. They are seeking damages of $50 million. A few people in the courtroom gasped at the number. Marcus didn't even blink. With respect, Your Honor, they are lying, Marcus said calmly. They tried to steal my AI algorithm, and I have proof. Da-hyun Lee stood up quickly. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Ju-won Park, is the CEO of a company worth billions. The idea that we would steal anything from... He paused, looking at Marcus with barely hidden disgust. Someone like Mr. Washington is ridiculous. Judge Kim nodded slightly. He had seen cases like this before. Young people who thought they could take on big companies without proper legal training. They usually gave up by lunchtime on the first day. Mr. Washington, Judge Kim said, trying to sound patient, this is not a simple case. Are you sure you wouldn't rather have a professional lawyer represent you? Marcus stood even straighter. Your Honor, I believe I can prove my case. I just need the chance to present my evidence. Judge Kim sighed. He had been a judge for 20 years, and he thought he had seen everything. But something about this young man's confidence made him curious, even though he was almost certain this would be a waste of the court's time. Very well, Judge Kim said. Mr. Lee, please present your opening statement. Da-hyun Lee walked to the center of the courtroom like he owned it. His expensive shoes clicked on the floor as he moved. Your Honor, this case is very simple. Park Technologies is the leading artificial intelligence company in the world. We have thousands of the best programmers and scientists. The idea that a young man working alone could create something we couldn't is impossible. As Lee spoke, Judge Kim watched Marcus. Most people would be nervous or angry when someone talked about them this way. But Marcus just sat quietly, taking notes on his laptop. There was something unusual about his calmness. Furthermore, Lee continued, we will prove that Mr. Washington somehow got access to our company's private files. He stole our ideas and is now trying to claim them as his own. We are asking the court to stop him from using our technology and to pay for the damage he has caused to our company. When Lee finished, Judge Kim turned to Marcus. Mr. Washington, your opening statement. Marcus stood up and walked to the center of the room. He didn't strut like Lee, but he moved with a quiet confidence that made everyone pay attention. Your Honor, Marcus began, I'm going to tell you a story about a big company that got scared. They got scared because someone they looked down on created something better than they could. Instead of trying to work with me or buy my algorithm fairly, they tried to steal it. When that didn't work, they decided to try to crush me in court. Judge Kim raised his eyebrows. This was not the nervous speech he had expected. "I'm going to prove 3 things," Marcus continued. "First, that I created my AI algorithm completely on my own. Second, that Park Technologies tried to hack into my computer systems 6 times to steal it. And third, that they are now lying to this court about everything." The courtroom was completely silent. Even Lee looked surprised. That's outrageous." Lee sputtered. "Your Honor, these are serious accusations against my client." "Then you should have nothing to worry about," Marcus replied calmly. "Unless, of course, I can prove them." Judge Kim leaned forward in his chair. Maybe this case wouldn't be as simple as he thought. The young man clearly knew how to speak in court, but could he really prove such big claims? "Mr. Washington," Judge Kim said, "you do realize that making false accusations in court can get you in serious trouble." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus replied. "That's why I only make accusations I can prove." He reached into his laptop bag and pulled out a thick folder. "And I'd like to start by showing the court exactly how Park Technologies tried to steal my work." Lee jumped to his feet. "Objection. We haven't even seen these documents." "Actually," Marcus said with a small smile, "I sent copies to your office last week. Page 47 of the evidence list I provided. Did you not read it?" Lee's face turned red as he flipped through his papers. Judge Kim watched this exchange with growing interest. The young man clearly knew the rules of court procedure. But where did he learn them? "Your Honor," Marcus continued, "I would like to call my first witness, Mr. So-Young Kang, a former security engineer at Park Technologies." A murmur went through the courtroom as a nervous-looking man in glasses stood up from the back row. Lee's face went pale. Judge Kim looked at his watch. It wasn't even 10 a.m. yet, and this case had already become more interesting than any he had heard in months. He had come into the courtroom expecting to send a young man home with a harsh lesson about the legal system. Instead, he was starting to wonder if he was about to witness something extraordinary. "You may call your witness, Mr. Washington," Judge Kim said. "But remember, in my courtroom, we deal in facts, not stories." "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus replied, and there was something in his smile that made Judge Kim think this young man had more facts than anyone expected. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." So-Young Kang sat in the witness stand, nervously adjusting his glasses. The former security engineer of Park Technologies looked like he hadn't slept well in days. Marcus Washington stood calmly at the podium, organizing his papers while Da-Hyun Lee whispered urgently with his team. "Mr. Kang," Marcus began, "how long did you work at Park Technologies?" 7 years, Kang replied. "Until 3 months ago." "And why did you leave?" Lee jumped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness's reasons for leaving are not relevant to this case." Marcus turned to Judge Han-Sol Kim. "Your Honor, I'm establishing the witness's credibility and his direct knowledge of events relevant to this case." Judge Kim looked at Marcus with growing curiosity. The young man had just handled that objection like a seasoned lawyer. Overruled. "The witness may answer." Kang took a deep breath. "I left because they asked me to do something illegal. They wanted me to hack into Mr. Washington's private servers." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Kim banged his gavel for order. "Please tell the court exactly what happened," Marcus said. "It started 6 months ago," Kang explained. "Mr. Park called a special meeting. He showed us an AI algorithm that could solve complex problems faster than anything we had. But it wasn't ours. It was Mr. Washington's. Mr. Park was very angry. He said it was impossible that some nobody could be our entire research team." Marcus walked to his laptop and pressed a few keys. The large screen in the courtroom came to life, showing an email. "Is this the email you received after that meeting?" Kang's eyes widened. "Yes. How did you get that?" "I'm good with computers," Marcus said simply. "Would you please read the highlighted portion?" Kang adjusted his glasses again. "It says, By order of Ji-Won Park, all security team members must find a way into Washington's systems. Use any means necessary. The company will handle any legal issues. Lee stood up again. Objection. This email could be fake. The email includes digital signatures and metadata, Marcus replied. He turned to the judge. I have asked a court-appointed digital forensics expert to verify its authenticity. They are ready to testify. Judge Kim nodded, impressed despite himself. Objection overruled. Marcus continued questioning Kang for another hour. The former engineer revealed how Park Technologies had tried to break into Marcus's systems 6 times. Each time, they found themselves blocked by security measures they had never seen before. When it was Lee's turn to cross-examine Kang, the usually confident lawyer seemed rattled. Mr. Kang, isn't it true that you were fired for poor performance? No, Kang said firmly. I resigned. I still have my resignation letter. And isn't it true that you're just angry at the company? I'm not angry, Kang replied. I'm ashamed that I almost helped steal someone else's work. During a short break, Judge Kim watched Marcus reviewing his notes. The young man had just presented complex technical evidence and handled witness examination like he had done it for years. Where did he learn all this? When court resumed, Marcus called his next witness, Dr. Mi Chae-yoon, a professor of artificial intelligence from a top university. Dr. Yoon, Marcus began, you've reviewed both my AI algorithm and all of Park Technologies' previous work. What did you find? The professor sat up straight, her gray hair neatly pulled back. Mr. Washington's algorithm uses an approach I've never seen before. It's completely different from anything Park Technologies has ever created. Could I have copied their work? No, Dr. Yoon said firmly. Your algorithm is more advanced and uses different principles. In fact, she paused, looking at Ji-Won Park. It's clear that the new breakthrough Park Technologies announced last month copies your methods. Lee shot up. Objection. Dr. Yoon can't know that. Actually, Marcus said, pulling out more papers, I have compared both codes side by side. Would the court like to see? Judge Kim nodded, and Marcus displayed the code on the large screen. Even to the judge's untrained eye, the similarities were obvious. Dr. Yoon, Marcus continued, in your expert opinion, what are the chances that Park Technologies independently developed code so similar to mine? 0, she replied. Some sections are identical, down to the same variable names and comments. Ji-Won Park's face had turned dark red. He wrote something and passed it to Lee, who stood up. Your Honor, we request a short recess to review this new evidence. Denied, Judge Kim said firmly. He was starting to see a pattern, and he didn't like what it suggested about Park Technologies. Marcus spent the next hour walking Dr. Yoon through the technical details. He explained complex concepts in simple terms that everyone could understand. The judge noticed how the jury members nodded along, following the clear explanations. Near the end of the day, Marcus played his strongest card. Dr. Yoon, when did I first submit my algorithm for patent protection? 8 months ago, she answered. And when did Park Technologies suddenly announce their breakthrough? Last month, after their failed attempts to hack your systems. Lee jumped up again. Objection. This is speculation. No, Marcus said calmly. This is evidence. He turned to Judge Kim. Your Honor, I have the Patent Office's certified documents right here, showing exactly when each piece of code was submitted. As the judge reviewed the documents, he couldn't help but smile slightly. The young man he had nearly dismissed that morning had just delivered a masterclass in presenting evidence. Court will resume tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Judge Kim announced. As people filed out, he heard whispers of amazement about the young man who was taking on a corporate giant. Marcus packed his laptop quietly, ignoring the angry stares from Park's legal team. Judge Kim watched him go, thinking about how wrong his first impression had been. Tomorrow would bring more surprises, he was sure of it. Just before leaving, the judge noticed something odd. Marcus had left some books on his table, advanced legal texts about intellectual property law. They were old and worn, like they had been read hundreds of times. And there, in the margins, were countless neat notes in Marcus's handwriting. Judge Kim sat in his empty courtroom, thinking about the young man who had just shown more legal skill than many experienced lawyers. There was a story here, he was certain, and he had a feeling that tomorrow he would finally learn what it was. The third day of the trial began with tension in the air. Judge Hansol Kim noticed that Park Technology's legal team had doubled in size overnight. 8 more lawyers sat behind Da-hyun Lee, all carrying thick folders. Marcus Washington sat alone at his table, reading through his notes. "Your Honor," Lee began, "we would like to call a surprise witness." Marcus looked up calmly. "Objection. Court rules require advance notice for witnesses." "This is an emergency witness," Lee insisted. "We only discovered their importance last night." Judge Kim considered for a moment. "Mr. Washington is correct about the rules. However, I will allow it if he agrees." Everyone turned to look at Marcus. He smiled slightly. "I have nothing to hide, Your Honor. Let them call their witness." Lee's face showed a quick flash of triumph. "The defense calls Mrs. Sunhai Park." A small, elderly woman walked to the witness stand. She wore the uniform of the cleaning staff at Maxwell Law School, one of the most prestigious law schools in the country. "Mrs. Park," Lee began, "how long have you worked at Maxwell Law School?" 15 years, she answered quietly. "And during your work there, did you ever see Mr. Washington in the building?" "Yes," she said. "He was the night janitor for 5 years, until last month." Whispers filled the courtroom. Lee smiled broadly. So Mr. Washington, this supposed legal genius, was actually just a janitor. Marcus didn't react. He just kept taking notes. "Mrs. Park," Lee continued, "did Mr. Washington ever attend classes at Maxwell Law School?" "No," she replied. "He cleaned the classrooms at night." "Your Honor," Lee turned to Judge Kim, "this proves that Mr. Washington has been deceiving the court. He has no legal training. He's not a lawyer. He's just a janitor. Whoa. If I may cross-examine the witness." Marcus interrupted politely. Judge Kim nodded, curious about how Marcus would handle this revelation. "Mrs. Park," Marcus began gently, "you said you saw me cleaning at night. What time did my shift start?" 6 in the evening. "And when did it end?" 6 in the morning. "During those nights, did you ever see me doing anything besides cleaning?" Mrs. Park's face softened. "Yes. After you finished cleaning, you would sit in the library. You read law books all night long." Lee stood up. "Objection. This is irrelevant." "I believe it's very relevant," Judge Kim said. "Please continue, Mr. Washington." "Mrs. Park, what else did you see me do in those 5 years?" The elderly woman smiled. "You would listen to recordings of law lectures while cleaning. You took notes all the time. Sometimes, when the professors left their classroom doors open, you would stand in the hallway and listen to their classes while mopping the floor." Marcus walked to his table and picked up a thick notebook. "Mrs. Park, do you recognize this?" "Yes," she said. "You filled hundreds of those notebooks. Every night you studied until morning." "Your Honor," Marcus addressed the judge, "I would like to explain something to the court." Judge Kim leaned forward. "Please do." "I couldn't afford law school," Marcus began, "but I wanted to learn. So I took a job as a janitor at Maxwell Law School. For 5 years, I worked at night and studied every spare moment. I listened to every lecture I could. I read every law book in the library. I taught myself programming during break times." The courtroom was completely silent. "The professors," Mrs. Park added suddenly, "they knew. They saw how hard you studied. Some of them started leaving their lecture notes on purpose where you could find them while cleaning." Marcus nodded. "They did, and I'm grateful to them. I learned more in those 5 years than many people learn in their entire lives." Lee jumped up. "This is ridiculous. Reading some books doesn't make someone a lawyer." No, Marcus agreed. But knowledge is knowledge, no matter how you get it. Would you like to test my legal understanding, Mr. Lee? Perhaps we could discuss the precedent set in the 1987 case of Thompson versus Digital Systems, or maybe the international copyright laws that your client violated when trying to steal my work. Lee's face turned red. Judge Kim watched with growing admiration as Marcus continued. Your Honor, they'd brought this witness to shame me, to show everyone I was just a janitor. But they don't understand something very important. Marcus looked around the courtroom. There is no shame in honest work. There is no shame in being a janitor. And there is definitely no shame in studying hard to make your dreams come true. Mrs. Park was smiling proudly now. Several jury members were nodding. Even some of Park Technology's lawyers looked uncomfortable. One more question, Mrs. Park, Marcus said. In those 5 years, how many nights did I miss studying? None, she replied firmly. Not one single night. Judge Kim looked at the young man with new understanding. The legal knowledge, the confidence, the dedication, it all made sense now. This wasn't just about a stolen algorithm anymore. This was about something much bigger. Mr. Lee, the judge said, did you have any other questions for this witness? Lee shook his head, defeated. His attempt to embarrass Marcus had backfired completely. As Mrs. Park left the witness stand, she stopped by Marcus's table. She spoke quietly, but in the silent courtroom, everyone heard her words. We were all wrong about you, young man. Everyone except those professors who saw your potential. You make us all proud. Judge Kim watched as Marcus thanked her respectfully. The judge thought about his own prejudices from the first day, about how quickly he had judged this young man. Sometimes, he realized, the greatest legal minds could come from the most unexpected places. Court will resume tomorrow, Judge Kim announced. And Mr. Washington. Yes, Your Honor. I look forward to hearing the rest of your case. For the first time in 3 days, Marcus allowed himself a full smile. Thank you, Your Honor. So do I. The 4th day of the trial began with an unexpected move from Park Technologies. As Judge Hansol Kim entered the courtroom, he noticed several new faces behind Da-hyun Lee's table. One man in particular stood out, Dr. Tae-yum Cho, Park Technology's head of research. Your Honor, Lee announced, standing with renewed confidence, we would like to call Dr. Cho to demonstrate how Mr. Washington's algorithm is based on our research. Marcus sat quietly at his table, reviewing something on his laptop. He didn't seem worried about this new development. You may proceed, Judge Kim said, watching Marcus carefully. Dr. Cho walked to the witness stand, his expensive suit matching his proud expression. He carried a thick folder of technical documents. Dr. Cho, Lee began, please explain to the court your role at Park Technologies. I lead our artificial intelligence research team, Dr. Cho replied. We have over 200 scientists working under my direction. And how long have you been developing AI algorithms? 20 years. I have published 53 papers and hold 38 patents in the field. Lee nodded approvingly. In your expert opinion, could someone without formal education create an AI algorithm more advanced than your team's work? Impossible, Dr. Cho declared. These systems require years of advanced mathematics and computer science training. A janitor could not possibly understand the complex principles involved. Marcus continued taking notes, showing no reaction to the insult. Dr. Cho, please explain to the court how Mr. Washington's algorithm copies your work. The scientist opened his folder and displayed several diagrams on the courtroom screen. For the next hour, he used complex terms and technical jargon to explain why Marcus must have stolen Park Technology's research. When Lee finished his questioning, Judge Kim turned to Marcus. Your cross-examination, Mr. Washington. Marcus stood up slowly. Dr. Cho, you mentioned that my algorithm uses something called recursive neural networks. Is that correct? Yes, Dr. Cho replied confidently. Just like our system. Interesting, Marcus said. He pressed a key on his laptop, and a new image appeared on the screen. Because my algorithm doesn't use neural networks at all. It uses a completely different approach called quantum decision trees. Dr. Cho's confident smile faltered. That's not possible. We reviewed your code. No, Marcus corrected him. You reviewed an old test file I left as a decoy when I detected your hacking attempts. My real algorithm is completely different. The courtroom burst into whispers. Judge Kim banged his gavel for order. Mr. Washington, the judge said, are you saying you deliberately planted false code? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus replied. After their first hacking attempt, I created a fake version of my work. I knew they would try again, so I left it where they would find it. The real algorithm was safely stored elsewhere. Dr. Cho's face had turned pale. Lee jumped up. Objection. This is the truth, Marcus suggested. He turned back to Dr. Cho. Doctor, would you like to explain to the court how quantum decision trees work? Well, that's a very complex topic. Let me help you, Marcus said. He walked to the whiteboard and began writing equations. Quantum decision trees operate on these principles. Would you agree? Dr. Cho stared at the complex mathematics. I'm not familiar with this approach. Really? Marcus asked. That's strange, because you just spent an hour claiming my algorithm copied your work. How can you know I copied you if you don't understand how my system works? Lee stood up again. Your Honor, this line of questioning is hostile. No, Judge Kim replied, fascinated by what was unfolding. It's relevant. Please continue, Mr. Washington. Marcus spent the next hour demonstrating how his algorithm worked. He explained complex concepts in simple terms, drawing diagrams, and using examples that everyone could understand. The jury members nodded along, following his clear explanations. Dr. Cho, Marcus continued, when did Park Technologies first claim to be working on quantum decision trees? 2 months ago, Dr. Cho mumbled. And when did I file my patent application for this technology? 8 months ago. Marcus nodded. No further questions, Your Honor. As Dr. Cho left the witness stand, looking defeated, Marcus wasn't finished. Your Honor, I would like to present one more piece of evidence. He displayed a series of emails on the screen. They showed conversations between Dr. Cho and Ji-won Park, discussing how to copy Marcus's algorithm after their hacking attempts failed. Objection. Lee shouted. Those emails are private corporate communications. They stopped being private, Marcus replied calmly, when they were used to plan illegal activities. Besides, they were sent using company equipment on company time, which means they are admissible in court. Judge Kim studied the emails carefully. They clearly showed that Park Technologies had tried to steal Marcus's work. More importantly, they proved that the company knew exactly what they were doing. Your Honor, Marcus said, I would like to call one final witness, Ji-won Park himself. The CEO of Park Technologies sat frozen in his chair. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. Mr. Park, Lee whispered urgently to his client, you don't have to. Actually, Marcus interrupted. According to Section 47.3 of the Corporate Liability Act, as the CEO directly involved in these decisions, he does have to testify. Judge Kim nodded, impressed yet again by Marcus's knowledge of the law. Mr. Park, please take the stand. As Ji-won Park walked slowly to the witness stand, Judge Kim noticed something remarkable. The powerful CEO, who had looked so dismissive of Marcus on the first day, now seemed afraid of the young man he had underestimated so badly. The judge glanced at his watch. It was only 2 p.m., but he had a feeling that by the end of the day, Park Technologies would be looking for a way to settle this case. He looked at Marcus, who was organizing his questions with the same quiet confidence he had shown from the beginning. Sometimes, Judge Kim reflected, justice came from the most unexpected places. And sometimes, the best legal minds weren't found in expensive law schools, but in the quiet determination of someone who refused to give up on their dreams. Ji-won Park sat in the witness stand, his usual confidence completely gone. The CEO of Park Technologies looked nothing like the proud businessman who had entered the courtroom on the first day. Marcus Washington stood at the podium, ready to begin his questioning. "Mr. Park," Marcus began, "please tell the court when you first learned about my artificial intelligence algorithm." Park glanced at his lawyer, Da-hyun Lee, who looked equally uncomfortable. "6 months ago," Park answered quietly. "And what did you do when you discovered that my algorithm worked better than your company's technology?" "We investigated it." Marcus nodded. "By investigated, do you mean you tried to hack into my computer systems?" "Objection," Lee called out. "Asked and answered in previous testimony." "Overruled," Judge Han-sol Kim said firmly. "The witness will answer." Park shifted in his seat. "Yes, we attempted to access your systems." 6 times, Marcus added. "And when that failed, what did you do next?" "We developed our own version." Marcus walked to his laptop and displayed a new document on the screen. "This is an email you sent to Dr. Cho 3 months ago. Would you please read the highlighted portion to the court?" Park's hands trembled slightly as he read. "Copy his code exactly. Change the variable names. Make it look like our work. We can't let some nobody beat us at our own game." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Kim watched as several jury members shook their heads in disapproval. "Mr. Park," Marcus continued, "your company is worth billions of dollars. You have hundreds of talented scientists. Why didn't you just offer to buy my algorithm or propose a partnership?" Park's face flushed with anger. "Because you're nobody. You're just a janitor who got lucky. We are Park Technologies. We lead the industry. We don't partner with people like me." Marcus finished calmly. "People who work hard. People who study at night. People who create something better than your entire research team." "Objection." Lee stood up. "This is argumentative." "No," Judge Kim interrupted. "This goes to the heart of the case. Continue, Mr. Washington." Marcus walked closer to the witness stand. "Mr. Park, did you ever consider that maybe the reason my algorithm works better than yours is because I approached the problem differently? That may be someone with a fresh perspective, someone who wasn't trapped in old ways of thinking, might find a solution your experts missed." Park said nothing, but his face showed his anger. "One last question," Marcus said. "After your company tried to steal my work and failed, after you tried to destroy my reputation in this court, would you still say I'm nobody?" Before Park could answer, Lee jumped up. "Your Honor, we would like to request a brief recess to discuss a possible settlement." Judge Kim looked at Marcus. "Mr. Washington." "No, Your Honor," Marcus replied firmly. "I want the jury to decide. This isn't just about money anymore. This is about right and wrong. This is about showing that justice works for everyone, not just the powerful." The judge nodded approvingly. After dismissing the jury for deliberations, he called both parties to his chambers. "Mr. Park," Judge Kim said seriously, "regardless of the jury's decision, I am referring this case to the district attorney's office for possible criminal charges related to corporate espionage and attempted theft of intellectual property." Park's face turned pale. His lawyers huddled around him, whispering urgently. The jury took less than 2 hours to reach their verdict. When they returned, the forewoman stood tall. "In the case of Washington versus Park Technologies, we find in favor of the plaintiff, Marcus Washington. We award him full ownership of his algorithm and damages of $100 million. The courtroom erupted in applause. Judge Kim banged his gavel, but he was smiling. "Mr. Washington," the judge said after order was restored, "I owed you an apology. On the first day of this trial, I thought you were in over your head. I was wrong. You have demonstrated not only exceptional legal knowledge, but also integrity and dignity under pressure." Marcus nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Your Honor." Additionally, Judge Kim continued, I am writing a formal recommendation for you to take the bar exam through the Special Provisions Clause. Your demonstrated knowledge of law in this courtroom more than qualifies you." Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. "Thank you, Your Honor. That means a lot." As people began leaving the courtroom, Mrs. Park, the cleaning lady from the law school, approached Marcus. She carried a small package. "The professors asked me to give you this," she said, smiling proudly. Marcus opened it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound law book with a note. "To the student who proved that the best legal minds can come from anywhere, you've earned your place in any courtroom." Judge Kim watched as Marcus thanked Mrs. Park. Then the judge did something he had never done before. He left his bench and walked down to shake Marcus's hand. "Mr. Washington," he said quietly, "you've taught us all something important today. Justice doesn't care about titles or degrees. It cares about truth, hard work, and determination." Marcus smiled. "That's exactly what I learned while cleaning those courtrooms at night, Your Honor." As Marcus packed his things to leave, Judge Kim noticed Jae-won Park watching from across the room. The CEO looked shocked, as if he still couldn't believe what had happened. His expensive legal team was leaving in defeat, beaten by a young man who had taught himself law while mopping floors. Later that evening, alone in his chambers, Judge Kim wrote in his personal journal, "Today, I was reminded of an important truth. Sometimes the greatest legal minds don't come from prestigious schools or powerful firms. Sometimes they come from someone who wants justice so badly that they're willing to work harder than anyone else to achieve it." Marcus Washington didn't just win a case today. He showed us all what real dedication looks like. The judge closed his journal and smiled. Tomorrow, the headlines would tell this story, but they wouldn't capture the most important part. They wouldn't show how one young man's determination had changed not just his own life, but the lives of everyone who witnessed justice prevail in courtroom 305.